I'm planning on making a shelf. I have a need for a shelf, and I have all this wood that I'm not doing anything with, so I think I'll go ahead and build one. I mentioned in an earlier video how, in addition to the wood that I collect in various scrap piles, I also seem to collect the hardware that comes with them. Right here you can see I've got a bag of screws, and I think I'll just go ahead and start going through these and using whatever I've got on hand. I plan on doing it the easy way with this cordless drill that my dad gave me, but if you don't have access to one of these, then I suppose a regular screwdriver could work as well. I don't know, I've never tried it. I suppose there's also a hammer and nails, which I've also made a sizable collection of as well. And surely you can find a hammer somewhere. Actually, what's even better is you don't even have to have a hammer, because anything can be a hammer. You can go all Stone Age if you want to. What I'm first doing right here is I'm just taking inventory of the hardware that I've got. I'm coupling that with some kind of general idea of a finished product that I have in mind. Once I take stock of whatever I've got, I'll figure out what my restrictions are, and then I'll just try to design around that. Alright, I've collected a small inventory, and I'm planning on what I might need and what might be most useful for whatever sort of situation that I'm faced with. Like, for instance, I've got this one piece of wood that's pretty much split almost down the middle. I don't want to get rid of this. In fact, I'd actually try to use it. So what I'm planning on doing is taking a couple of screws and really just inserting them into the wood a certain depth, so that I can hopefully try to reinforce this piece of wood and, you know, get some kind of use back out of it. Actually, I wonder if I showed the wrong screw. Here's what I'm planning on using. You can see that lined up next to the side of the wood, near the silhouette, the profile, whatever. It seems like it's going to go in a suitable depth. It should pretty decently cover that, or jump that gap, and hopefully hold these two pieces of wood together. Another thing I'm trying to keep in mind is that I'm considering everything as some kind of limited budget. I mean, once I use something, I don't have it available for me anymore. So with that being said, I don't want to start going crazy, putting, you know, unnecessary screws once every half inch or every millimeter or something crazy. I mean, this doesn't need to be able to withstand a fully loaded vehicle. I mean, I'm just using it to hold some plants. With that in mind, I think I'm just going to have maybe one screw up here, another one down here, and depending on how well things look, I might do a third one, you know, somewhat right in the middle. That mark is a little bit misleading. It's actually maybe like a third of the way through. Like I said, I'll probably do two first, starting off, and depending on how things look or feel, I'll do maybe a third one right in the middle. I don't know if I need safety glasses. However, it's probably a good practice to have. With all the experience I have working on cars, it's so much quicker to just put on a pair of safety glasses than it is to try and fish out some piece of dirt from my eye. That takes at least 5 or 10 minutes, as opposed to finding some glasses and putting them on. Alright, here we go. I'm probably going to end up getting sawdust everywhere, but that's okay. I've been meaning to vacuum anyway. What I'm doing right now is I'm starting a pilot hole, as opposed to putting in a screw from the very beginning. Now, if you've ever worked with wood, you've probably experienced some kind of splitting whenever you try to put a piece of hardware into a piece of wood. After all, this does take up space, and if you're trying to put this thing into a piece of wood that's already occupied, then the wood is going to naturally get out of the way. So what I'm doing is I'm first removing a little space from the wood, not so much that the screw just falls out, but just enough so that way I can insert the screw without too much separation of wood and, you know, causing further cracking. I think that's the right depth. Let's go ahead and insert our hardware. Okay, we got one done. Let's go for number 2. I really do like this one feature on this drill, where the chuck, I think it's called, can quickly just separate from the main drive shaft, so that way you can quickly switch from a drill bit to a screwdriver bit. In this case, it's a Phillips. I just think that's really cool. All right, we got screw number 2 in. I didn't really bother making any sort of exact measurements. In any other sort of situation, I probably would be a little bit more particular. However, this is going to be one of those things where I'm just going to, you know, install it and forget it. It's most likely just going to get dirty and covered with fertilizer and potting soil and all sorts of, you know, bugs and stuff. With that in mind, I'm not really too particular with how exact or perfect this looks. I'm really just going for a functional approach. Right, so with this piece of wood repaired, I'm going to make a very basic, kind of like H-frame, where I'll have my anchor, well, I would have my foundation piece down here. I would have two vertical pieces right here, and then I'm going to have a horizontal portion right here. Now you might be asking why I'm not going for a complete box, which is like all the way up here, and that's based on the dimensions of the window. I did some rough test fitting with these pieces of wood, and if I were to have my second horizontal piece all the way at the top, I would really have no place to put anything up there. That's just kind of the dimensions of the window that I'm working in. That's also why I'm not putting any sort of I guess forward or backward bracing to keep this from falling over. The windowsill that this is going in is pretty confined, and this is going to have no problem being held tight up against the window, so there won't be any sort of issue with it falling forward or backward. My only main concern is that it doesn't kind of buckle sideways, so that's why I'm going to try to be pretty generous with the amount of hardware that I put into the joints between the horizontal and vertical pieces. I'm going to start out with my pilot holes. Alright, what I just did is I finished up the bottom anchoring holes that are going to join the vertical components, which are these two guys right here, to my foundation piece. Now that I've got these holes drilled out and piloted, I'm going to stand them upright, put one on each end of this, and then I'm going to start driving in my screws. Alright. It's not professional, but I think it'll do. Let's go ahead and start doing the other 3 corners. Another thing about pilot holes is you don't have to worry about trying to make sure that your screw is going in at some kind of unintended angle. When you take care of that with a pre-drilled hole, it's less you have to try and keep up with at a single time. Okay, cool. We've got 3 pieces put together so far. I'm just going for number 4, and then we'll hopefully be done. I really do hope that these pieces of wood are straight. I'm not really double checking this in my window yet, and one thing I'm concerned about is that I'm going to finish up and it's going to be all sorts of crooked and it's not going to actually fit in the windowsill. Oh well, fingers crossed. Hey, check that out. It almost perfectly aligns. If I were to straighten it back up, it's not going to be under too much stress. Here goes the final 2. Hey, we're done. I think it turned out pretty nice. I'm going to go put this in the window, see how it looks, and hopefully see if it fits. Check that out. I think it turned out quite nicely. And now I've got that much more space for all sorts of plants that I don't really need. Cool. Just put that right there. I just noticed that it's leaning a little bit. And that's okay. I think it works well enough for what I had in mind. It's not like these things are very heavy. And all I've got in there is just a little bit of soil right there, and then some kind of plant. Very light. I don't think this shelf is going to have any sort of issue. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, that's cool, good job, but I don't have any sort of power tools. I don't have a drill. I don't even have any sort of screws or nails or anything, so what do I do there? I would say that's totally okay, because you don't need those. If you have some rope, that's all you need. There's this practice called pioneering, and it was something that I first learned back in Boy Scouts. And if you can somehow find a piece of rope, then you can have a way to attach pieces of wood together. You can more than likely find pieces of rope, no matter where you live. For instance, this I pulled out of an old box spring. You can even see it's still got the tensioning clip right here. This little cinch. I assumed that they were done with it, so I just kind of cut it out and stowed it away somewhere. It doesn't have to be rope. I mean, you could use wire or pieces of fiber from plants or twigs, I don't know. It's really just a matter of what you've got available. I'd like to take some time real quick just to show you a really simple, basic lash that's used in pretty much all sorts of lashings and knots and whatever. It's called a clove hitch, and it's probably the easiest thing to tie with some kind of structure and some kind of string. The basic idea is you want to create two loops like you would just typically wrap any sort of rope or wire. You can see you've got my two loops right there. But then you want to reverse the order of whatever sequence that they're stacked in. That's going to leave you with kind of like this double stack of rope with this third string kind of crossing over both of them. And then what you do is you take that and then you just slip it over whatever sort of thing that you're tying to. And there you go, you've got a clove hitch. It's on there pretty well. But if you really wanted to tighten this down, you could just do something with this remaining end and give this just a little bit more sturdiness. One useful thing that I find about lashing and using rope is that you're not limited to whatever sort of materials that you've got available. For instance, say I've got this plastic tube, this chunk of wood, and this iron rod. Now, normally without any sort of rope, how would you go about attaching these? If I wanted to make kind of like just a simple sort of tripod or something, I don't know. Well, you can't really drive nails easily into, metal. Maybe the plastic would be easy enough to drill into, but this metal thing is a little bit more of a challenge. In addition, these things are completely different sizes, so that's another challenge. So, using screws or nails might not always be the best solution. With that in mind, I'm going to try to use rope to attach these together. I don't think I'm going to go into any sort of deep detail on how to tie this tripod lashing. There's all sorts of tutorials and guides and stuff up that you can find on the internet. I'll just be using the guide that I have right here from my old manual. And there we go. Now, my manual says that the two outermost posts are supposed to cross underneath the third one, but I'm not sure if I really had the luxury of doing that. In any case, once you've got your three things put together and standing upright, you can go ahead and start your campfire. Have fun.